Chapter 36. Statism as a Religious Fact. 2. As we have seen, the state is a religious entity. Joseph R. Strayer stated that, quote, "A state exists chiefly in the hearts and minds of its people. If they do not believe it is there, no logical exercise will bring it to life." End quote. Why should a given state have given boundaries? Is it race which describes the state? The United States is clearly not of a given race, if we can use that word. France includes a variety of peoples, and Britain is made up of Gaels and English in a not too harmonious union. Is it language? In the United States, besides Indian tongues, we have Spanish as an official language of New Mexico, and a variety of Europeans and Asiatics clinging to their mother tongues. In France, the Bretons prefer their language to French, and Great Britain has its Gaelic-speaking minorities. Why, if language and race are important, should not Germany include East and West Germany, Austria, and other territories, or the United States include Canada, and France much of Switzerland, and so on? National boundaries are artificial lines, not God-given realities which have a natural inevitability about them. Moreover, the state cannot be identified with government. It is one form of government among many, the main forms being the self-government of the individual man, the family, the church, the school, vocations, society, and then civil government. Within each of these spheres, there are many varieties of governments. Thus, within the world of commerce, there is the government of the stock and commodity markets. Here, oral contracts made and made without witnesses are regularly kept, although 5 minutes after a telephone call, a change in the price of a commodity can cost a man large sums of money. Still, the contract is kept. Customary law has long ruled in many societies. In some parts of the United States, as in the Ozarks, some religious groups restricted marriage and divorce to the church and refused to recognize any valid role for the state. This was still true as late as the 1950s. This does not mean that these varying forms of government necessarily give good government. To say so would be to fall into the same fallacy as statism, namely the belief that some institution can give good government to bad men. Each, at least in its own sphere, gives some checks and balances against the others. The US Constitution includes a checks and balances element in its three branches: executive, legislative, and administrative. These, however, function only when the federal government was small and one variety of government among many. Now, all three branches are an essential union against all rival forms of government: the individual, the family, church, school, vocation, and society. The state now claims to be the government, a radically false claim. This is not all. The state is no longer content to be that form of government which is a ministry of justice under God. It claims to be the overlord or God of society. It seeks to subordinate all other jurisdictions under its own, as though the state represents disinterested benevolence and is hence the proper judge over all. Where many governments exist, the corruption of one is not necessarily the corruption of all. Where statism triumphs, the small corruptions are replaced by the massive corruption of the state, an evil which permeates all of society. The issue with regard to the state is thus a religious one. Evil is a problem for all of society. The corruption of sin affects the person and all his institutions. The family is God-ordained, but sin can turn the family into hell. Recently, a boy murdered his father. The father had forced his mother into prostitution, repeatedly raped his daughters, and assaulted his son. He had forced drugs and pornography on all his children. The family in the hands of such a man is clearly an evil place. So too are church, state, and school in the hands of reprobates. The idea that the state can be the overlord and moral arbiter between men, other governments, and institutions is one of history's most evil illusions. It is a religious illusion which seeks to circumvent the need for God. Its ancient classic is Plato's Republic. Its current expression is the modern state. At issue is whether or not the key governing unit on earth is the redeemed man in Christ or the state as God walking on the earth. Behind this is the basic issue. Does sin have its only true cure in Christ or in the state? How is the good life possible for men? Can the state provide justice without Christ and his law word, or is the logical end of the state, like unregenerate men, to be a hell on earth? We must affirm that the individual, the church, the state, and all other forms of government can only manifest original sin, the will to be their own God, Genesis 3:5, apart from Jesus Christ. There can be and needs to be a disestablishment of the church, but there cannot be a separation of religion and the state. It is only a question of which religion shall prevail. The modern state is anti-Christian in origin, conception, and administration. Earlier we saw the implications of Marsilius of Padua's thought. Walter Ullmann, in The Individual and Society in the Middle Ages, called attention to the humanistic foundations of the state in Marsilius and others, and as developed by the state. Laws were held to be valid laws by consent. By means of this doctrine, the law of God was not proper law, because its subjects gave no consent. Sovereignty was transferred from God to the people when lawmaking was given to man. Instead of power and sovereignty coming from God alone, it was now held to come from man below. Whatever the natural inequality of men within this sphere of civil government, all men were held by Marsilius to be without distinction. Marsilius also placed control of the church in the hands of men. As E.A. Gortner in Peter and Caesar pointed out, church and states were thus both under man, not Christ. Even more control of the clergy was given to the state so that the natural order might predominate over the supernatural. The church, in fact, was viewed as a human institution. Marsilius's position was a political Averroism. Aristotle's humanistic state had been revived, and Marsilius was a professed Aristotelian. He was a man whose thinking made Christianity at least irrelevant, if not a nuisance. We cannot, however, see Marsilius as the inspiration to Machiavelli, Erasmus, Moore, Hobbes, and others. Altogether, we're part of a shift from Christianity to humanism, from God to man, and from redeemed man to natural man. The thinking Marsilius represented was current in his age. The revival of Hellenic thoughts meant that priority was given to the natural order. In time, the supernatural receded to a minor role, and then it was denied. George Grote, 1794 to 1871, the English historian, educator, and politician, wrote his many-volume History of Greece, a work which gave devout attention to all the details of Greek culture and history. Turner described Grote's attitude as a, quote, vendetta against modes of human association other than the ties of citizenship, end quote. His view of society was of essentially atomistic individuals under the state. He saw family relationships as pernicious to the body politic, and he looked for, quote, a new genesis of the man and the citizen, end quote, under democracy, which for him was, quote, a vehicle for moral transformation, end quote. The Victorians believed that the ancient Greeks had a natural virtue which provided for a good society. Matthew Arnold and others saw Greek humanism as man's hope. English education for its elite students was mainly in Greek and Latin and studiously irrelevant to the modern world in order to be relevant to its humanistic faith. The state was seen as man's hope and salvation. The variety of secret societies in Britain and America were dedicated to this faith. Man, by his own efforts through the state, can remake man and society. The consequences have been the wars and politics of the 20th century, man's darkest age.